All right, you guys, I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Yes.
Allegedly, there are some people on Zoom, so we'll talk to them too.
You're doing
I tried. I'm gonna start the clapping thing real soon if you don't. Clap once if you can hear me, right? Raise your hand. I love it. And I may not be as mobile as I usually am. I'm limited to this screen for Zoom and camera, so I'm going to try and stay put as best possible.
Okay.
But first of all, thank you all so much for coming. I know summer's a tough time, everybody running around, kids at home, stuff to do. So I appreciate you guys being here for our little home inspection chat today. Again, my name is Kimmy McBurney. I'm with American Eagle Home Inspections. And a couple of announcements to start off with. WNC Real Estate Photography, who knows Julia, Jackie, and the gang? Fantastic. They pitched in to buy lunch today, so be sure to thank them. They are phenomenal. Not only, they're not here today, but I'll extend your thanks. They are phenomenal. I use them for all my stuff. They also do vacation rentals for me and stuff like that too. So really versatile, floor plans and stuff like that. So check out WNC Real Estate Photography. And a quick announcement, if you haven't heard, me and a couple other vendors are hosting a trivia night, Tuesday, July 23rd at the Mule. We've named it the Battle of the Brokerages, so we can settle the score once and for all, who's the best brokerage in town. So Andy, who's volunteered at EXP. So please feel free to register. You can register as a team, or you can just go general admission to watch the throwdown. So excited for that. That'll be really fun. It's going to be real estate based trivia and then Asheville trivia as well. So pretty cool. So yeah, welcome. Who am I? Why am I here? Why should you listen to what I have to say? So like I said, my name is Kimmy McBurney. I hold a few professional licenses that may make me semi-qualified to talk to y'all today. I'm a licensed general contractor. That's actually what came first. I was born and raised in construction. Spent most of my adult life so far in commercial construction, but transferred to residential a few years ago. In that process, I got my real estate license. I have never really been in production. I commend you all for what you do. It is a very tough job, but I got to buy and sell for myself for the flipping with the construction. And then I also got my home inspection license. So we've been running the home inspection company since 2017. I think I got my license 2 or 3 years ago. You know, I figured since I'm the face of the company and I like to know what I'm talking about, I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring. But you will not catch me in any crawl spaces or attics or on anybody's roof. I actually wasn't in a crawl space the other day, but try and stay on this side of the crawl space.
Media, we know.
Yes. Yeah. So who are we? So we are American Eagle Home Inspection. This is most of the team. So the first one, the tallest, is my husband, Chuck. Then we have 2 full-time inspectors, Dustin and Lindsay. Lindsay's in the field full-time. And then Justine over there at her desk. If you ever call American Eagle Home Inspection, that's who you're talking to. She actually works remotely out of Charleston, South Carolina. But that is Justine. So I've got a little game we're going to play really quick. If you guys could take out your phones, everyone on Zoom, you can play too. You can go ahead and find us on social media. I prefer Instagram. Even if you already follow us, play along. I've got some incentive for you too. So find us. If you don't follow American Eagle Home Inspection on Instagram, please give us a follow. If you do follow us, find a random post and give it a like. The more random, the better. What that's going to do is going to put you guys in my news feed for a little giveaway. Let me check it out here. I'll give you guys a second. Live and love real estate. Well, first, yeah. Jay, live and love real estate. Or which account is it?
Did you go for your personal?
I'm going for my personal.
So you guys
You don't have one of these. So
Yeah.
There you go. And I leave the stickers on in case you want to re-gift it to a client. It's fine. You're the cool kid now. So the reason I do this, we put a lot of effort into our social media. By we, I mean I do. Because there's nothing I can say in the next few minutes that's really going to convince you guys. You're good. Who's over there when you want to grab a plate? Nothing I can say in the next few minutes to really tell you as much about us as I would like you guys to learn. So we love using social media. I post twice a day. We post field findings. So I tell a lot of newer agents it's a great way to get familiar with a lot of things you'll see in inspections because we're posting a lot of what we see in inspections. And then I also post something about our team personally. Right now, we're going through a 30-day series of getting to know Chuck and myself. So if you want to see like marital discord on a daily basis, running a business, follow us on Instagram. So we try and keep it entertaining. So yeah, today I'm actually a little bit out of my element. I do host lunch and learns quite often. I rarely actually talk about home inspections because to me they're slightly boring because we do them every day. But for you guys, I understand that not everyone sees what we see on a daily basis. So I'm actually excited to talk about home inspections for once. And it's a little different because I usually have panelists and other speakers, but today you just got me. So we're going to dig in. So home inspection 101. Can somebody tell me what a home inspection is?
It's an inspection of a home.
Genius. All right, we can all go home now. So let's see. So NAR, old reliable NAR over there, says a home inspection is a visual assessment of a home's condition in which inspectors look for hundreds. They actually said thousands in there, but I was like, that's extreme. So we changed it to hundreds of potential problems in areas of the home, including ceilings, walls, floors, windows, doors. What I like to say, top to bottom, side to side, front to back. As home inspectors, we are limited to the actual home structure. A lot of times we'll kind of use our discretion if we want to include a retaining wall or a handrail on an outside stair. But really, we are limited by our license to the actual home. So if someone kind of goes off kilter and talks about other things, or that's why we exclude, as home inspectors, septic, sewer, water lines, all that kind of stuff. We do offer them through ancillary services, but a true home inspection is actually just the physical home. So that's probably one of the first questions we get is, what do you actually inspect? So that's what we look at. So today I chose to focus on the top 10 findings of 2023, but as I was making the list, I was like, it's pretty much the top 10 findings of every year, probably ever, because it's the common things we see over and over again. So why focus on them? When I talk to people, buyers or sellers, about getting a home inspection or pre-listing a home inspection, I tell them it's very useful because if you're seeing the top 10 things over and over, it benefits a seller because I'm going to say, here are 10 things you can look for in your home that you really want to take care of so that you're not, worrying buyers when they're previewing your home, right? It eats away at their psyche. Annie and I talked about this yesterday. When you walk in and there's that smell or the light bulb's out and guess what? Oh, well, got to rewire the whole house now because the light bulb's out. Or you can just change the light bulb and satisfy their curiosity. So I tell people, it's kind of that low-hanging fruit, and not all of this is stuff you can take care of right away, but hey, let's take care of the common things so we're not getting into it with buyers. And then I tell agents who have buyers, some of the top agents we work with who are very successful, I kind of ask them like, hey, how do you present a home inspection to a client? Or how do you kind of prepare your client for the home inspection? They actually have a script that revolves around basically just this. Probably going to see a crack, probably going to see X. So you can also prepare your buyers and say, hey, here's kind of the top 10 things we see in this region. So just know that, everything's fixable, everything's negotiable. Let's not worry about it. When we get it, we'll tactfully, respond and deal with it. So I think on both sides of the coin, it's really important to be prepared for this kind of top 10 list. So we'll dig in. And these are in no particular order. So there's no grand finale. So example number 1. What do we see here? Freaking gutters. I will say, we do interviews with our inspectors, and I think I ask the question to every inspector, like, what's the most common thing you see that's so easy to fix? Gutters, clogged gutters. As you guys know, there's just, they make so many more issues, which is so easily preventable. So cleaning your gutters, because like I said, if the gutters are overflowing, you're going to have landscaping issues, erosion issues, drainage issues, water gets next to the foundation, now it's in the basement. So for this one, I actually, and for all of our defects today, I have like a little meter over there. It's green because it's so easy to fix, right? So definitely if you have a client who has a listing, like that's the easiest thing I recommend is to have the gutters cleaned. And let's do a show of hand. Who in here is team leaf guards? I shouldn't raise my hand because I am not. Yeah. You like leaf guards? All right, sure. You're impartial? Well, as a team of home inspectors, we are not team leaf guard.
I'm just team no gutter.
Oh, but I don't know if I'm team no gutter.
Just get rid of the problem.
Yeah. When we were in home inspection school, the school says the first question you ask yourself when you approach a home is where's the water going? Right. So yeah. So, but we do see no gutters all the time.
I'm totally kidding.
Yeah. I won't mention you by name.
Are you gonna say why you don't like the coverage?
Yes. So the cover, so basically the leaves just then accumulate on top of the cover and then water is just shooting straight off the roof. So same, like they sell them as if they're supposed to kind of like wash the leaves off and then only trap the water. We see them clogged more often than we see a gutter. So we are not, sorry, Leaf Guard of America. We are not Leaf Guard fans. I mean, they can work in some assemblies, but, and I think I did include some videos. So let's see if this link works. So here's the video we posted a while back from our Instagram, why kick-out flashing is important. So this has to do with your gutters as well. So this was, before we opened it, the siding looked intact, but that water was basically going to the end of the gutter. And if it doesn't have that kick-out flashing to redirect it, it's going to overflow the gutter on the other side. And this is something we found in the field because of that.
I don't know what kick-out flashing is.
Yeah. So at the end of a gutter, there's going to be kind of like a piece of flashing that's kind of sideways, because when the water goes into the gutter, you want to make sure it's flowing towards that downspout. So that kick-out flashing is like kind of like kicking it the other way. But if it's not there, the water's going to go sometimes overflow the gutter. And this is what happened. So in this particular case, it went all the way down the side of the wall, into the deck floor, into the crawl space. So water is pretty nasty. So for that reason, those are some good things to look at. So we'll move on from there. Number 2 could also probably be lumped in together, but I didn't. What is this? Downspouts. Yeah, a couple of pictures of downspouts. Downspouts probably the secondary one we see the most next to gutters. And we really highlight it because, like I said, water is a beast and water creates problems probably faster than any of the other elements that I've seen. So from top to bottom, so here we have the gutter draining near the foundation. Probably the most common defect we call out is that it's draining too close to the foundation. Some remedies there. Sometimes you see those little like concrete or plastic kind of like valley guide little things. So those are fine. But again, you ideally want to be 6 to 10 feet away from your foundation. So that doesn't really even get you far enough. So you guys have probably seen the above ground plastic corrugated extensions. That's what we generally recommend. The utmost fix would be to be a buried underground line. Obviously, that's a lot more expensive, needs a lot more infrastructure. And you would also need the proper slope away from the home to accomplish that for an underground drainage system. So at minimum, you want to make sure they have those above ground extensions. And yeah, that middle picture is kind of showing you how that water's just can kind of eat away. And especially if you have a crawl space or a basement, it's going right back in that direction. And then lastly, I put the downspout extension cover. That we see those damaged a lot. They just get damaged by, like in this one, it's near the house. So maybe the lawnmower hits it or, just deterioration over time. So downspouts are definitely something to be addressed. I put this one as a red because if it's getting to this point, the damage is what is more so concerning to me. Obviously, super easy fix, but definitely want to make sure you're addressing it. Let's see what fun video I found of this one. So this was actually a commercial building I saw. Their downspouts are dumping right there on the concrete. It had eaten the concrete away, just water. But over time, it basically just eroded the concrete on the property. So that was a fun one to see. All right, moving on to number 3. Anyone guess what this defect is?
Can't see.
It's a little grainy. Tree limbs in contact with the roof. So yeah, the top picture is my probably most classic representation of this. The tree limbs touching the roof. Not only do you not want them touching the roof, but you don't want them too near the roof because that's what's going to produce those leaves that clog the gutters. So actually the picture in the middle, I know it's a little hard to see. Someone, a home inspector had shared a video of this and there was a tree that basically kind of like swept the roof in this one corner. The entire corner, all the the granules were compromised, really just from this tree kind of grazing the shingles. So you'll see that deterioration. And then my last one is obviously, you really don't want your tree in contact with your home to that level. But also here in Western North Carolina, recommending to clients to have someone assess the health of their trees regularly. As if any of you guys know, if you have a wooded property, I know we do. And I swear every day there's a new branch that's fallen. So really important to take care of this. I put it as a green more so to the reference to like the initial just leaves on the tree. But obviously to the level of branches or limbs falling would be much more serious. Oh, my remote's not working. All right. What category are we looking at now? Electrical. Yeah. So I got a little general in the next couple, but obviously they kind of all go together. So what are some common electrical callouts you guys see?
GFCI.
I was like, there's a secret. They're out there. GFCIs, loose outlets, missing covers. So I think loose outlets and missing covers are the lowest hanging fruit. We see them all the time. You guys, they're like 10 cents at Lowe's. Like just get yourself an outlet cover. Or as an agent, if you are that person who kind of wants to go above and beyond, like when you're doing your pre-listing walk, little things like that. It's really unfortunate we have to call it out because it's such an easy fix. So GFCIs, it gets a little more complicated. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend you guys change those out on your own. But making sure there's the GFCI protection because we're always going to call that out. And then going to the panel. So this panel in particular, that's a double tapped breaker. I'm sure you guys have seen that one called out. We also see mismatched breakers a lot. These actually aren't that big of a deal to fix. This is actually a photo of one of the fixes. So you get a special breaker that you can pigtail the two into the one, and it's pretty much solved. So, but I feel like electrical issues are the one thing that I see, not one thing, but high on the list of things I see deals falling apart for, because it's such an unknown. We also see a lot of houses with ungrounded receptacles, older homes. So again, those things can kind of really eat away at the psyche of a buyer. So electrical issues are definitely out there. Oh, I got a video. I wish these came through better. Oh, so Dustin, one of our inspectors, is a former electrician. I think electrical defects are his favorite things to find. But in this house in particular, the service cables are within reach. They should not be within reach. He always likes to joke that he's going to zip line on them. So that is definitely also still a defect. So want to make sure your service cables are away from the house. And those are generally easier fixes too, because your power company is likely responsible for your service cables. So
Let's say historically, you just have to call the power company.
100%. Yeah. Just call them and they can usually work with you on a fix. All right. What about this one? What are we seeing? Plumbing. Yes. The infamous S-trap. P-trap. I've seen D-traps, E-traps, like very creative traps. So I feel like this is probably one of the most common things we call out in plumbing, aside from leaks, but most leaks are in drains such as this or in the crawl space. So does anyone know the difference between an S-trap and a P-trap? Or why one is better than the other?
The S-trap is letting sewer gas back into the house.
Yes, correct. So I assume there is a noticeable odor about it. But exactly, so the P-trap is designed, like you're seeing there, to have a full seal on the sewer gas as to not let it back into the atmosphere in the home. Again, usually a pretty easy fix, so I call this one a green one. But then also, anyone know what that bottom picture is?
The wrong kind of pipe.
The wrong kind of pipe. They're the flex drains. Flex drains are basically like kind of an easy cheat for plumbers when you don't necessarily have the room to maneuver, or if you want to do the bends and angles, it requires to get the correct drainage. We'll see those flex drains a lot. Problem with the flex drains is they clog easily. If you can imagine, minimal amount of debris going through this drain. We've seen some that are like almost translucent. You can see stuff in there. Not great. And they're also not as easy to secure. We kind of usually see some not so great assemblies, and then that's where we see the leaking. So definitely plumbing. And also for your sellers on this one, or it's a good tip, clear out underneath the sink. If we can't get to it, we're not allowed to move personal items. So make sure that it's visible. Because again, if we have to tell buyers like, hey, we couldn't really see under there because there's a bunch of stuff under there, that's not very reassuring. So that's an easy thing that sellers can address to clean out underneath the cabinets. And then we can also see if there's anything that needs to be addressed. And again, a pretty easy fix, but we definitely see it a lot. See what our example is. Oh, this is a good one. So this is not under a sink, but that is in I can't tell if it was a crawl space or a basement, but essentially they screwed a ball valve into kind of like a clean out for this drain. So not a traditional building material, but all right. It was working. It wasn't leaking. So, but we're probably going to call it out for, unconventional building materials. All right. So number 6, what system are we looking at here? HVAC. Yeah. So these 2 pictures aren't actually that big of a defect, but kind of want to talk through some of the things we commonly see in regards to HVAC. So that bottom picture is your filters. So we do look at the filters. Again, if you're going to boast on your listing that it's a well-maintained home, this is probably going to be your first place to start. These filters should be changed. We rented a house one time, and if you had pets, they asked you to change them every month.
Yeah.
I think that's a little extreme.
I change mine every month, but I have 4 dogs.
Get it? I have 2 Aussie Shepherds, very long-haired dogs, so I probably should be changing mine every month. But yeah, every few months, based on the recommendation of how many people occupy your home, really low-hanging fruit in regards to HVAC. Yes.
What's your take on like the washable, reusable?
I don't have much of a take on it. Yeah.
And they were not recommended by our technician.
HVAC technicians don't recommend reusables because sometimes those charcoal things, when you wash them out, they don't separate back out and it restricts the airflow going through the air.
So it's really just a marketing.
Yeah. You put that in
Some was
the.
good, yeah, some was like reusable and recyclable,
Yeah.
not quite as
He's like-
functional.
It's like your airflow is kind of low. Oh, really? And he looks at the bill, he's like,
Yeah, so for everyone on Zoom, the question was, what do we think about the reusable HVAC filters? I had no personal opinion, but we did have an opinion that someone said an HVAC tech said they were not recommended, which I can definitely imagine not being as efficient as, buying a new one. So yeah, really low hanging fruit. And then to the top picture, a couple defects that picture doesn't necessarily exemplify, but the lines that are running near the home have that black plastic insulation on them. When that insulation is compromised, we see it all the time. Again, couple bucks at Lowe's. It comes in really nice little sticky packages where you can get that fixed. So that's another one that I think is really easy because from an inspector's perspective, when we see inefficiencies with HVAC or electrical, sometimes we have to kind of call it a system defect, right? Like, hey, we've seen enough defects that we are going to recommend somebody kind of come and look at the whole system. And again, you guys know for a buyer, if they're looking at an HVAC system defect, what does that mean to them?
We want money for it.
$10,000. I want the whole thing replaced. So again, like addressing these little items. Another one that comes to mind when I see this picture is the unit being out of level. So we see that quite a bit, especially here in Western North Carolina with all the moisture we get. Sometimes the soil that's supporting it can erode or just settle over time. So want to make sure those stay plumb. Let's see what our example is. Oh,
I remember the scene.
I wish I had sound on it. So this is playing a Christmas song. So this is our highest viewed video to date. I think it almost has 12 million views on Instagram. I put it out around Christmas. And so essentially someone had nailed a piece of wood so you could not raise the temperature. And I put a little thing that was like, Merry Christmas, love Dad, P.S., put more clothes on. So I actually don't even think this one was the functioning thermostat anymore. I think they had replaced it later, but an awesome find. So yeah, that one was, yeah. It was a good one.
it's like parental controls.
Yeah, old school parental controls. Yeah, like now you can just lock the nest, lock them out of the thing. All right, anyone know what this is depicting? Radon. So this one's pretty generic, but I definitely think here in Western North Carolina, it's fairly prevalent. So can anyone tell me what radon is?
Natural occurring gas in the soil.
right?
Yeah, that was great. That was almost like from the EPA website. Yeah, so radon is a naturally occurring gas emitted by the Earth's surface. Generally, while yes, it is harmful in larger concentrations, when you're out and about, it is dispersed enough in the atmosphere that it's not a concern. But the problem with it in residential capacity is, unfortunately, some of the way the structures are built can trap the radon gas. So that's when the problem occurs. And so I included a map that is of probably most of our service areas. And you see there, Buncombe County, Henderson, Transylvania, Mitchell are all EPA level 1, which means on average, you are more likely. So I think they say, you have 50-50 chance of the home being above the 4.0 picocuries per liter, which means the EPA is going to recommend that the radon be mitigated. So I love this image, especially if you're talking to buyers from out of town. Sometimes when someone calls for an inspection, I often like to ask them where they're from, because that tells me a lot about what they're familiar with. A lot of our Floridians have no idea what radon is. A lot of the beach people aren't familiar with the septic tank. So radon is definitely one where we want to keep our clients educated, and the EPA has some really great resources. So I gave this one a red because obviously it's a pretty serious thing to deal with, but I always tell people 100% treatable. And actually, in my opinion, radon mitigation systems are pretty cost effective. I mean, at minimum, you're probably looking about $1,500 if you don't have to encapsulate. So definitely educating your clients on radon is very important. Any questions on radon before we move on? I feel like I should have answered questions all along.
Can you actually do you know more about the mitigation system and like what does encapsulation mean?
Yeah, so a mitigation system is, so essentially you're just displacing the air, right? So radon is raising up from the earth and getting trapped in the house. So two types of systems. So the system that does not require encapsulation are traditionally more so installed on basements. So somewhere where it's not open air. So what they're going to do is they're going to install pipes that basically run from underneath the concrete slab, and it runs through a fan system, and it basically sucks the air out and dispels it outside. So it's displacing enough air and disrupting enough of that kind of contamination to reduce the radon levels in the house. And they're very effective. Like one time we saw one, we had an inspection, and I think it was at 11, which is kind of high for this area. And the tenant was like, "Oh, I just turned it off." Or we had like a sweet old man, and he's like, "Oh, it was really noisy." And I was like, "Okay, let's turn it back on." So people just don't know. But then we came back after they turned it on, and it was a 1. Like they're very effective, but make sure they're working. And I always tell people too, when talking to agents, and they're like, "Oh, we don't need a radon. They have a mitigation system." To me, that's the biggest red flag, because that means for a fact there was high radon there at some point. And like I just kind of exemplified by some examples, they fail, they stop working, people turn them off. They're made of a series of seals and whatnot, so the seals can fail, stuff like that. So that's usually like a basement or a slab on grade home. You'd see that typical system. So it gets a little complicated if it is a crawl space. Generally, crawl spaces would dispel the radon a little bit better. But again, I tell people radon does not discriminate. Doesn't matter if it's an old house, new house, mitigated house, renovated house, it could always be there. So always make sure you have that test. Or tests are usually good for about 2 years. So if the seller, gives you a test and you want to assume that test, that's fine. But if you have a crawl space and you have a radon issue, you may have to encapsulate the crawl space to effectively kind of remove that air and displace it. Because if you just put that vent pipe down there, it's not going to do a great job of removing enough air to displace that. So yeah, great question.
Is that just
That's it.
lining it with plastic?
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole system. You usually have the plastic. There's usually a dehumidifier down there. But yeah, so that's an encapsulation, and those can get a little bit more expensive, a couple $1,000s depending on the size of the home. But yeah, again, very effective. So I always tell people too, if you get into a situation, if you need a mitigation, it's always helpful to just get a quote from a radon mitigation company. Even if your buyer is just going to do it after the fact, like make sure you have an actual quote so you know what you're dealing with. All right. What does this look like? Water's back again. So crawl spaces. So speaking of crawl spaces, neither of these are encapsulated, clearly. Oh man, I could probably do a whole day on crawl spaces. So a couple things here. So we'll go from the top. So yeah, so this is what's going to happen if too much water is exposed to your crawl space or basement. We see these a lot. This is exactly what it would look like if there was probably a downspout draining too close to that corner of the home. It can really cause this level of damage. So we see water in crawl spaces all the time. And I do tell people, on average, crawl spaces are going to be moist. There is a certain level of moisture that's acceptable. It's actually 18%. It's pretty high. So if you ever see a moisture reading 18% or lower, that's actually acceptable. That's okay. But when we get beyond that, it's definitely a concern.
Is that in like the air test, like the humidity in the air, or is the 18 when you put your?
Yeah.
Has that gone up recently? I feel like it used to be 14 or 15.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's probably a range depending on a variety of factors. If there was a massive rain or whatnot, you may accept one over the other. Also, different building materials test differently. So make sure, some are different acceptable levels than others. Like a CNU is going to be really a lot higher, but like wood or drywall or anything like that we're going to want it to see it 18% or lower. That's why inspector's probably going to stick your floor joist because those are wood. So that's going to be a lot more susceptible. And if those stay moist, we're going to see deterioration of the floor joist and stuff. So then that white powdery substance, anyone know what it's called?
Effervescent.
Close. Efflorescence. Yeah. Evanescence, efflorescence, I like it. Efflorescence. Yes, it's a tough one. Yeah, I certainly didn't know what it was till I got into home inspections. So again, that is evidence of water intrusion. So that's telling us that over time there was a water exposure. And sometimes if people address the water in their crawl space, that will be left behind. You can clean it, but again, it's just a red flag of something we see that, hey, one time or another, there was moisture in this crawl space and it was an issue. So make sure it's taken care of. So that bottom picture with the top red arrow, that one, I'm actually surprised. Well, they probably took the insulation out. So a lot of times we'll have defects with the insulation. So if you ever go into a crawl space and the insulation is kind of like hanging down, I posted a video one time and I was like, someone got in a fight with the insulation and lost. And obviously I was joking and someone was like, it's moisture. And I was like, I know it's moisture. Okay, sir, pipe down. So, but when you see it hanging down from the floor system, it's moisture. So the moisture is going to basically, accumulate in the insulation and start coming down. So that's really important because when you get to that point, now we're talking potential fungal growth, mold stuff. So we see the hanging insulation a lot. But again, if you're seeing the hanging insulation, you're going to see, a bevy of other things to go along with it. And then in this one, the top picture actually does have it. You can't really see. Top picture does have a vapor barrier, but in this picture, it's doing a better job of keeping it above ground than below ground. The second one does not have the vapor barrier. But we do recommend that all crawl spaces have the vapor barrier. So what that's doing is obviously the soil kind of has a natural water content. You want to make sure it's not kind of evaporating up into your crawl space. So that's definitely a really common one we see is vapor barrier that's been compromised, displaced, lack of vapor barrier. And that's a pretty easy fix. It's not too expensive to have the vapor barrier put down. So this one is definitely a red because also people, who in here lives with their crawl space?
I have a dirt basement, so there's partially kind of cross.
When was the last time you were in there?
I go on there once a month to change the filter.
Oh, okay. That's a good reason. A lot of people are not in their crawl spaces very often. So these items tend to perpetuate, especially with your cellars and whatnot. So if you as an agent want to, just go down there and get dirty and roll around and kind of identify some of these issues, or these are great reasons to have those pre-listing inspections because you want to identify these issues. We see not only this, but, I think sometimes people ask kind of what's like the craziest things you've ever seen. What comes to mind to me is crawl spaces. We see a lot of times the sewer lines come disconnected and you are literally just dumping sewage into your crawl space. That one was pretty bad. Or one time, like the dishwasher was disconnected, or the drain line from the kitchen. It's like we, as home inspectors, we go turn on the dishwasher, turn on all the pipes, like do all the things. We go downstairs and it's like whoosh, just like dumping in the crawl space. So definitely an area of concern. We as home inspectors particularly offer an inspection called a maintenance inspection. Those are going to go in the areas you don't go in, right? You guys are going to know if your sink is leaking or your toilet's leaking. but generally not everyone's on their roof, in their attic, or in their crawl space. So if I haven't driven the point home enough, crawl spaces are definitely a big area of concern. Because once that moisture gets into the floor system and whatnot, now we're talking foundation issues. We'll see what video. Oh, this was me in the crawl space the other day. So this actually was not an actually encapsulated crawl space. It should have been, but this is kind of what you're going to see. You'll usually see the thicker, less transparent white in a properly insulated crawl space. But my husband Chuck and I were on an inspection one day, and I was just there to tag along. So I was shooting content in the crawl space. What else do you do? But that was a nice crawl space, so we hung out down there. And I had some inspectors joke. I posted that on social media. One inspector's like, I like to do that when the buyer's following me around. I was like, don't tell our secrets. I'm just kidding. You guys know how it is. So yeah, sometimes they're actually nice places to hang out. All right, what is this one?
Carbon monoxide.
Well, so the one in the picture is a smoke detector, but yes, I put the carbon monoxide because those kind of go hand in hand. This again is another one of my low hanging fruit that I see on a lot of reports that doesn't need to be there. So we actually call it out as a DIY fix. And I think that's also really important when choosing a home inspector. You want to make sure they're communicating effectively and not alarming your clients. You know, everything is important to communicate to a client. But for example, if we call it a smoke alarm or smoke detector, we're like, hey, DIY fix, you can pick them up at Home Depot or Lowe's, like no need to worry, but hey, we need smoke detectors and carbon monoxide. So the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recommends that every home with a fuel burning appliance, fireplace, or attached garage have a CO detector. That includes gas or wood burning fireplaces, furnaces, water heaters, stoves, clothes dryers, and space heaters. So there are technically some properties that would not necessarily need a CO2 detector. I get that question a lot. So that's important to know. But obviously if your home inspector is calling them out, I assume they've done their due diligence and assessed if the property actually needs a CO2 detector. But again, pretty easy. There's a lot of plug and play versions that are acceptable. We now see the recommendation, they want to see them hardwired, but again, that's not accessible for everybody. So at minimum, let's plug in our detectors. All right, what do we see? Cracks, lots of cracks. So this is a cool kind of graphic that I found. So we'll go through each of them separately. All right, what's worse, a vertical crack or a horizontal crack? You guys are so smart. I'm so impressed. So yes, horizontal crack. So in this picture, 1 and 4 look pretty similar, but looking at the horizontal crack, so what that is coming from, so what do you think causes a horizontal crack?
Water pressure from the outside.
Water. Here we go again. Water. Fix the water, clean your gutters, attach your downspouts, because they result in things like this. So this is a basement. So yeah, a horizontal crack is basically occurring because the hydrostatic pressure from the exterior of the wall is essentially compromising the strength of that wall. We don't like to use the S word, the SE word, structural engineer. If we don't have to, we use it very sparingly. Like I said, we like to start with a DIY fix, and then we're going to go to handyman fix. Then we're going to go to contractor fix. I'm going to try and throw a specialist in there if I got one. My last case scenario is a structural engineer. But if we call them out, it's going to be pretty serious. So, and you guys as real estate agents know we kind of want to avoid that because we don't want structural engineering issues, and they're slightly difficult to get a hold of. So, yes.
How about with like the superior wall, those sorts of foundation walls? What are you seeing like with those products?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar.
Like it makes sense with the cinder block foundations, but when they're bringing in the base, I guess more from like a
retaining wall?
Slip basement, but they're bringing them in sections.
Yeah, it's kind of like a 10 by 8 or 10 by 10 panel that they slide in.
They slide
Yeah.
in and they put them, they seal them together.
Ah,
Well, those are my thought, or what I've been told, they're designed to take water from the outside, and they actually filter water down to close to the footers, and there's an internal track for that water to come out the bottom of the foundation.
yeah.
That's how the superior foundation is created. But I don't think you've ever seen them do that.
Yeah, I don't think any foundation material would probably be made to crack. So I think anything with a crack would probably be of concern. So yeah, the horizontal cracks, those ones we see. So our general rule of thumb in inspections, if it's a quarter of an inch or wider, it is of of utmost concern. So basically I tell people, if you can stick your fingers in there, probably going to have to talk about it. So, I mean, again, everything can be fixed and addressed. You know, we see the carbon strapping on these as a hindrance, so it's preventing further movement. But again, I always tell people, before you take care of your crack, you want to make sure you address the source, clean your gutters, make sure your downspouts are draining appropriately. Well, this vertical crack in particular is very concerning, but usually you're going to see those hairline cracks. We see them a lot in like the single wide foundations, or a lot of times people just don't understand. And, you know, sometimes they'll be CMU, but they'll have stuccoed over them, and the stucco has the hairline cracks. It's really important to just know and understand what the cracks are. But this one in particular was that one of the agents I told you that kind of has a great script for home inspections. That's one of his top things. Like, you're going to see a crack somewhere in something. So then the step crack, the one that's following the actual line of the masonry block, I agree that's probably the least concerning, unless the size is significant. But those we're probably going to recommend they just be sealed and you keep an eye on them. So like I said, and actually we use the line, if we can, of no significance at this time. So really try and do our best to say, like, hey, from a professional point of view, you've got something, keep an eye on it, but it's of no significance at this time. So really important to kind of understand the severity. So yeah, and then we got a floor crack. This one looks a little unrealistic. I think it's a digital floor crack, but we see floor cracking a lot. I mean, honestly, whenever you see concrete, you're going to usually see the cracking. I mean, they try and do the control joints so it doesn't crack, but generally I don't see them of much concern. We see them more so of a concern if they're outside, like if they're a patio and it's been compromised and there's a severe crack or something like that. But to me, I put the green there because I think a floor crack is not of substantial concern, or on average is not as concerning as our other types of cracks. Any crack comments, questions, concerns? No, this is just a graphic depiction I think someone put together.
So they have a hard time with that house.
Yeah, I saw one the other day. I'm gonna look at it, like the horizontal crack went along all the walls. Yeah, it was
I guess you could at least say it's going to fall all in one place.
true. We'll just cut the foundation and just jack it down.
Settlement.
Of normal settlement. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so any questions on cracks or anything, any other basement? Yeah, all right. Well, we're zooming through. Oh, it's been 45 minutes. All right. So yeah, so that is the conclusion of my presentation. Like I said, those are the top 10 things we usually see in the field. Again, we are American Eagle Home Inspection. My name is Kimmy McBurney. Another thing I also like to offer to agents is if you see anything in the field and you want to run it by us, you know, whether you've had an inspection yet or not, even if you're on showings, I always offer it to agents. One of my top agents at one time, he sends me a picture of like clearly mold in the corner. And he's like, what do you think? I was like, is this a trick question? Not great. But that agent actually carries his own moisture meter. So he stuck it with the moisture meter, or he has the pin list, so the one that's on the surface, and it showed very low. So I was like, well, clearly there was an issue. They probably took care of it, which the sellers did say, oh, we fixed it, but they didn't fix the visible evidence. So, but like I said, I just like to offer myself as a general contractor and a home inspector. Like, I'm always here to help you guys and give advice and talk about, you know, situations, or I get a lot from sellers too. Like, hey, we're going to list. What does this mean to you? If they don't want to go the full pre-listing inspection, like, hey, can you help me out with this? Like, big concern, not a big concern, stuff like that. So any other questions before we wrap? I don't think I have anything else to do. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you guys. Absolutely. And please, if there's extra food, please take it with you. Feel free.
And I just want to say thank you too for your attitude about it and the way you kind of make fun.
Yeah.
We try. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you guys.
For sure. Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
So she mentioned this, and I have anyway, talking about communicating how things are represented and everything like that. I mean, is there an industry standard? Because I love it when an inspector is good and neutral and points things out without being alarmist, but that's not always the case. Like, is there, you alluded to that a little bit, but is there a particular standard?
There's not. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differentiating factors between inspectors. Like, sure, we all have a standard of practice we need to follow. Same as you realtors, right? There's things you can and cannot say. but there's ways we can say it.
Right.
I think it's really important. Actually, we have a builder who likes to recommend us to his clients because we don't say, electrician, HVAC, whatever. If it's necessary, we do, but we'll always start with DIY, then handyman, then contractor. So yeah, I mean, and honestly,
Yes.
it's almost risky, not risky, but like as inspectors, like we do put ourselves on the line a little bit of saying that's of no significance. But if, in our professional opinion, like if we don't need to alarm people, we don't need to alarm people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Watch Shields fall apart with other inspectors that like people will bring in and
Yeah.
I'm like, could you please do
I wish, there was foul language in it, but I shared a reel the other day of, it was like an agent joking that their buyer found the inspector on Craigslist. And they're like, the agent's like, it was like an old woman, she's like, don't F it up, don't F it up. Like, yeah, so I totally get that. Yeah, or when you inherit a report from like a pre-listing inspection or something, yeah, it's not always great.
I just wanted to say, I mean, thank you, this was great, because just the way you worded things makes it so much easier to use than even like just, we have an understanding about things, but then having like a better script in your mind to help
Yeah.
explain it is great. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do plan, Bill shared these slides, but I do plan at some point to have some sort of usable graphics and something that you guys can use for your clients, like non-branded, of like, hey, here's the top 10 things you can prepare yourself. And we try and do that too. Like our home inspection company, like you guys speak a language, like I built out a CRM that basically pre-inspection tells them what to expect. Post-inspection, we're like, hey, here's what to inspect from your report. Here's a video on how to read your report if you need it. So yeah, I think communication is so key in the process. Yeah. Well, thanks guys. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.